here at FIU in Washington, D.C., where we have our students from our Future of Artificial Intelligence fly-in presenting their hackathon. And so you're going to hear ideas, solutions regarding AI Genesis mission, AI innovation and technology and the economy, AI workforce and the future of job focus, as well as responsible AI, ethics, governance, and trust focus. The students were here for a 3-day experiential learning opportunity, talking about artificial intelligence and the future of what that looks like in many different aspects within federal government, within agencies, and within Congress, as well as our corporations and how they're using that and what that looks like. So our students are gathering and have gathered all the information that they've processed and now are going to be presenting on what that looks like and as solutions, recommendations, and so we look forward to it. So our first group up will be how can the United States maintain global leadership in AI innovation?
All right, good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Good, good. My name is Lauren Ray, if you don't already know me. This is Kai, and this is Veronica. So today we're tackling the topic of how can the United States maintain global leadership in AI innovation, and Kai is going to start us off.
No, there. No, you gotta pin it first, I think. Yeah, let's pin it. Pin it and then move it. All right. Oh, wait, hello. All right, there we go. All right. Thank you, Lauren. All right. So everyone, again, my name is Kai, and before the United States can do any sort of AI development or competing in the future with other nations, we have to establish two main things: computational power and electricity generation. So the first point is that, energy infrastructure determines who can compete, because without power, without chips, we can't do AI research. So one thing that I wanted to mention first is that as of 2023, the national usage of electricity was around 55 gigawatts, and it is now projected to rise up to around 85 and probably even more by around 2027 and then 2035. Secondly, a way that we can do this is to take a look inspired from our adversaries, one being China. And in this case, they have a sort of, they have a Eastern data, Western compute strategy where they use, nuclear, hydro, solar, wind, coal, and natural gas all together to fund and build these new power generations. I don't know how much they're ahead, but I know as of right now, China is, I think, maybe double or triple the energy that we are. And that's allowing them to power their own AI projects without hurting their own grid. Thirdly, one thing that I saw, I think yesterday during the Punch Bowl event, they were mentioning that if they allowed AI companies to fund and build their own power generation, whether that be on site or, just to fund or sponsor the development of the public power grid, that could help offset the costs that are put onto the taxpayer when we do more AI development. Secondly, now it is chips, all right? So, we can have as much power as we want, but if we don't have chips, we can't actually do the AI research. So, and right now, chips, they're scarce, graphics cards are going up, RAM's going up, and that is impacting startups because, they have limited capital, limited funding to get started, right? So one thing that we can do to help this is right now, cloud computing. We have, Azure, Oz, Google Cloud, and one way that we can get this to further is, I believe the National Science Foundation has a program called Cloud Bank. Right now it's very limited, but basically it bankrolls and it does these grants to startups that allow them to use these servers to do AI. So I propose that we either expand or build a new program that allows us to go much further than that, to allow startups to focus on compliance and actually doing research instead of trying to get money in the first place. Last point that I said, as before, some people may think that, ethics and stuff may be a hindrance to development, but I don't think that, right? Here in the United States, we're a democracy. We value, ethical development, responsibility, data privacy. So if we were to build funding structures that incentivize companies to follow this, that it would now become a competitive advantage rather than a disadvantage to some people. All right, next slide. Oh, I'll do that. Nope. All right, now it's off to Lauren.
Thank you, Kai. So one of the most common themes that we've seen within this fly-in is how do we become AI literate? Which means how do we use it, how do we implement it, how do we regulate it? And this is a very unique opportunity for the United States to step in as a leader in teaching states and global corporations how to use AI. And so our team came up with a strategy of leadership and development through collaboration. Myself and a few of my peers had the opportunity to visit the Institute of World Politics to listen to a roundtable of the global corporation EY, which mixes education and psychology to develop a technology to read people's body language, read their speech, and kind of underline nuances. And what this does, it exposes the United States to different viewpoints and innovation that might not exist right now domestically. And as well, it diversifies projects and introduces three main big points, which are U.S. ownership in global corporations, which is always stimulating for the economy, international influence, which circles back to our main point. We want to show the world what the U.S. can do, how we can influence AI innovation across the world. And third is new funding opportunities. Not all states have the fiscal capability to fund their own projects, and so by selling U.S. AI technology, it helps build not only their AI grids and technologies, but our own. And this kind of dabbles into diplomacy, collective security, as well as broader technology reform. So moving on to trust and security, this is another really big aspect. I have one company example. Verily, they spoke on the healthcare panel. Positive client and customer relationship stimulates the economy. What customers want is security, stability. They want to feel safe knowing that their data is being sent out. They just want to know what it's being done with. And a big point is loyalty in the midst of AI evolution. AI evolves every day, and so does policy. So what can we do to make customers feel safe in investing in these companies? And so I think that's a big point, moving abroad and internationally. So safety and stability drives engagement. And I've put two major bodies. It's the United Nations AI Advisory Council and the US and EU AI collaboration. These are just bodies to help establish regulatory measures so that AI usage is both ethical, responsible, kind of a way of the land of how to move forward. And this is a good way for states to gain some inspiration on how to move their AI forward. And lastly, this is more of a defense sector point, but secure critical technology supply chains. As we've seen in a few of our roundtables, private sector companies are now being contracted on a level never seen before for public sector projects in defense. And so it is very important that we work with our international partners to secure these critical technology supply chains to protect not only ourselves, but potential customers abroad in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, so supporting startups. Like any project, AI doesn't struggle because of a lack of ideas, rather a lack of resources. Why does this all matter? Startups drive innovation faster than big companies. Local communities are more willing to support their own people because they're motivated and inspired by their own neighbors, rather than helping out a big company like Google that, in their minds, they have a ton of people and they have the capital to fund themselves. For these reasons, they struggle. As I mentioned, a lack of financials, policy implementation, and talent competition. Now, because of AI, anyone becomes an expert in it because it's changing so fast that you can learn it. So it's really important that you find a niche or a specific avenue to focus through and create your own. If not, you're not going to make it in that field. And with that policy uncertainty, the federal government, as we've learned these last few days, has not created a set guardrail or regulations. And so creating the startup, it's difficult to pursue it if you don't know the rules. With every problem, there is a solution. And therefore, we have 3 potential ideas for this. So SBIR and STTR. These last few days, there's been a ton of acronyms, so I'll break it down. SBIR is Small Business Innovation Research, and STTR is Small Business Technology Transfer. These fall under the Department of Interior. And from our research, the federal government is giving these funds, if they have, if I remember correctly, $2.5 billion that they're giving out for this research, but because there are no guardrails and the federal government has not created any policies, it has not been implemented to its full potential. Then there's also Create AI-specific venture funds backed by the government. This kind of ties into SBIR and STTR, except this would be category-specific. And then offer tax credits for investors who fund AI startups, incentives, essentially. Now, all of this is beneficial. Why? Because the guardrails create the rulebook that will help any startup. While this is focused on AI, it helps any business. And with that specialization, faster, more efficient projects would occur. And the best example of this would be the AI-powered simulation training. I wasn't particularly the group that went to it, but in conversation, we learned about this technology that they're developing. It interprets the conversation you're having to figure out the feelings that you're having and what you're trying to express, and whether they're accurate to what you're trying to get out of that conversation. There are no nonverbal cues. It is just the interpretation of your voice. So how I'm talking right now, it would transcribe it and figure out what pace I'm using, the volume I'm at, to then determine, am I upset or am I happy to be here? Am I having an argument with someone, or is it all bliss and joy, essentially? So yeah, thank you. I believe the next 2 slides are people that aren't here. However, we'll go over them if you'd like. Okay, so industry partnerships, this is from Joshua, or no, Sebastian. What are industry partnerships? It's a collaboration between companies, universities, and governments. They combine research funding and real-world application. Why do they matter? It's faster innovation, access to the data and computing power, and it keeps the US competing globally. How do we strengthen them? Public-private funding programs, as mentioned in our previous slides, tax incentives for collaboration, AI research hubs, and shared secure data platforms. Next one is from Adriana, responsibility. Go for it.
So Adriana covers fairness and responsibility. In AI systems, avoiding bias is, no, it's okay. You can just put it back. Here, I'll just look up here. So fairness in AI systems, avoiding bias is important, and we can do this by diversifying our data sets that are being used. Second is reliability and safety, ensuring systems work as intended under all conditions through rigorous testing and consistently improving cybersecurity. Privacy and security protects user data with encryption, anonymization, that's a big word, and strict access controls, along with ensuring the user agrees to privacy agreements. Transparency is making AI decisions explainable and understandable to those using it, along with transparency and guidelines. Accountability is to assign clear responsibility for AI outcomes with governance frameworks. And lastly, inclusiveness, which is to design an AI to serve diverse groups, preventing exclusion like seen in systems in healthcare. Ethical AI matters because it helps organizations avoid legal and reputational risks, comply with regulations, and build trust through transparency and support sustainable long-term innovation. Thank you. We do have one more slide for questions, if anyone has any.
You touched on it on some of them, but if you were to sum up, if we were your client, Florida International University, where do you think the opportunity for us to kind of engage most directly in is?
Yeah, speaking on behalf of my peers, I think that responsibility and being ethical is kind of the foundation for moving forward. Supporting startups, that could be university students or alums, working on a very small level that could eventually receive funding and bloom into a very big company. So starting at the root, I mean, we're a university, so educate AI literacy, perhaps go into more specific majors like business. I know FIU has a very exciting drone program going on, so that's a great part to expand on. I don't know if you guys want to.
I have a response. So in one of the Zooms that we were on, there was a professor starting up her own AI being implemented for professors. I think that is a prime example of supporting startups at the university level because it's impacting not only the professors, but also the students. This is giving them feedback. It's just a better communication between the student and the professor. With that, you kind of tapped into the business students. I think letting them run with AI and combining them with these computer science students is a great opportunity so they can learn from one another and create AI startups. In conversation with President Nunez, the first day being here, we spoke about having almost like a Shark Tank where students would be able to propose their own ideas. Maybe if there was a part of that tank is centered on AI, that is where it would take off. Yeah, I don't know if you got anything.
I mean, I think the one thing that I saw here is that, I didn't really know I didn't know the extent that FIU was already involved here in DC. And, I think that we will just have to continue that and expand upon that because, we have all these technologies and all these other solutions, but none of that happens without the policy in place, right? So, I think that we should continue to bring more students up here, train them, teach them how to advocate on the Hill for these new AI policies because, if the government doesn't really have an idea of what they want to do, well, then we can't do much with them, or, we can't do much without them, right? So I was thinking, just continue with policy, continue working with the government, and then, yeah.
All right, now time for our next group. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good morning, everyone. So we were hackathon group number 3, and our question focused on AI workforce and the future of jobs. Oh, here we are. Oh. So first, let's begin with the facts. AI is affecting everyone, whether you know it or not. Daily interaction rate is 27 to 37% of Americans alone. Active usage, roughly 55% of Americans stated that they use AI on a day-to-day basis. However, this is on a hidden usage. This does not incorporate the hidden usage. So despite only 55% of Americans stating that they use AI on a day-to-day basis, 64% of Americans are unaware that they are using AI. We can see this in terms of a Google search. If you go on Google and you search, "Hi, how can I cut an apple in 8 slices?" an automatic AI summary shows up. The demographic breakdown of this is that younger adults predominantly use AI the most within age groups of 18 to 29. So we ended up breaking this down into 3 key components: education, strengthening workforce pipelines, and the future of generations in terms of AI. So let's start off with early AI exposure and education. My team and I came up with a system called Study Buddy. So what is Study Buddy and how does this incorporate and strengthen our education system? Study Buddy would be a small little chat box in the corner of a student's computer. And if a student has a question, it would ask their Study Buddy. Now their Study Buddy would be personalized to the student and their personal learning environment. So for example, I might be a visual learner. Study Buddy would go ahead and incorporate this this into the curriculum and teach the students strategies that are applicable to their personal learning strategies. Now, for someone like like Samuel, who might be an auditory learner, Study Buddy would adapt to his personal needs as well. Study Buddy would also allow to communicate with the teacher's personal curriculum, and it would ensure that when the student asks a question, it doesn't ask, what is 3 plus 3? It doesn't give the answer of it equals 6. It would instead show strategies and problem-solving solutions on how to do so. So not giving the student the exact answer, but rather steps on how to get to that answer. We can see that Study Buddy would be successful simply because of our research with Squirrel AI. So Squirrel AI is already a program that is in use currently, and their system uses each student's strengths and weaknesses and adjusts the lessons to the student. So this is where we got our idea of personalizing the students' lessons to them, because it already is successful with Squirrel AI, and we see this already on a day-to-day basis. So essentially, it's very similar to an assistant model that we are proposing, and it gives the teachers more control on how AI is used in the classroom. Here you are.
Thank you, Jahani, for that. So I wanted to see as a raise of hand, who has never used AI in their lives? All right, no one. All right, seems pretty obvious that we have all used AI as of now. As Jahani said, it is engraved. It's invisible infrastructure. So sometimes you're using it when you're applying to jobs, search engines. When you're ordering at McDonald's, you're using AI. So throughout this flying, we have heard many times about the AI race, right? We had the space war. Now we have the AI race with China. So to not fall behind, we have implemented these innovation hubs that have already been implemented throughout the United States. But we think they would be a good idea right here. I think this is a Miami-Dade campus. Yeah. So sort of like the initiatives that FIU is going to have, we want to create these hubs to also be implemented not only in big cities, but also smaller cities where maybe some of these people don't have enough money to have a cloud subscription, and also focus on jobs that AI is also creating, like machine learning, engineering. There's going to be more emphasis on cybersecurity. AI is here to just get rid of the repetitive tasks, right? Humanity has already gone through this. We had the Industrial Revolution, right? Most people were blacksmiths, weavers, and this is the same thing that's going on right now with AI. So we think this would be a good idea to level the playing field so everyone can also have a equal opportunity. Like we've also seen throughout this flying through various industries. We've seen it through the medical field, which I think has impacted me the most, how AI can now detect cancers and how it's become a medical assistant. We've seen it through legal assistance, in the Institute of World Politics. I saw how AI is even being used as a practice tool to de-escalate confrontation with individuals. So AI is here to stay, and we think this would be a good idea to implement. And yeah, okay, so this slide, I believe, talks about the Chips and Science Act, which is an initiative from the US government to fight the China influence and Chinese AI growth, because once again, it's been very repetitive. Whoever wins the AI race is going to control the world, right? So this is already a demonstration that this is already a key national issue and a key national priority to implement these hubs.
And finally, how do we incorporate AI and ensure that the future generation is ready for what AI has in store? So we propose to prepare the next generation through AI is through legislation. So whether we like it or not, we have to follow rules and regulations every single day. When there's a stop sign, you must stop. Same thing with AI. Whether you like it or not, AI is being implemented into your day-to-day life. So incorporating these two aspects together allows us to ensure that AI is in everybody's life on a day-to-day basis. So ensuring that our students are exposed to AI from a young age all the way into their elders. So laws shape access, fairness, and opportunity. AI is affecting everyone across all industries, and policy ensures responsible use and equal access. So a couple legislations that we were saying that we should implement is AI literacy and ethical AI standards. The great thing about saying that we should mandate AI literacy is that it goes hand in hand with Study Buddy, which is what we had previously talked about. So ensuring to prepare students to incorporate AI into legislation ensures that future workers understand both the opportunities and responsibilities of AI. Saying that this goes hand in hand with Study Buddy, making sure that implementing legislation stating that AI should be used into teacher curriculum would further strengthen our Study Buddy into their curriculum as well, ensuring that students are exposed to it and future generations are learning more about it. Another thing is with AI ethical standards, we want to ensure that students use AI responsibly and understand the potential biases in algorithms. So making sure that we have laws and regulations on how to properly use AI and not using AI for for bad things ensures students to be aware and also just people in general. So finally, AI is further modernizing, revolutionizing, and it's taking over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of AI starts with you and I. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I'd ask the same question. Of all of your slides, what do you think is the most exciting opportunity for FIU to attack and
I would personally say the Study Buddy, and I think that's simply because we can use that with multiple professors in multiple classrooms, and this also goes hand in hand with a variety of different majors. For example, an engineer, someone who, I don't know if you're an engineer or not, but someone who's an engineering major, if they don't know how to properly code, for example, they can ask Study Buddy, hey, how can I code? And it won't give you an exact algorithm on how to do it, it'll give you a step-by-step process. So it's very much teaching you how to get to the answer, not giving you the answer, further incorporating learning strategies. Any other questions?
As a student,
Yes.
would you want to use Study Buddy, or would you rather have a face-to-face? Would it have like a personality or a image or something so that it doesn't seem like you're just chatting with a chat box?
Yeah, so it could have a personality, but ultimately I think that also depends on the teacher. Again, Study Buddy can be systemized and programmed by the teacher itself. Again, every teacher has different teaching strategies, so we want to ensure that Study Buddy doesn't take over the classroom. Rather, it enables and strengthens teaching strategies. So that would ultimately be up to the teacher, but me as a student, I would personally like it to have a little bit of a personality. It can be kind of funny. It could be like, hey, I'm kind of having a bad day. Today I wasn't able to focus on the classroom. How can I study today? Can you give me an agenda on how to properly study and make sure that I can get an A on my midterm for the following day? But Samuel, what about you?
What do I think about study? Yeah, I think we've seen many new AI platforms. So I think the nuance in Study Buddy is that it would focus mainly on studying, right, for the student. It wouldn't just be a platform that gives you the answers, maybe, but it can be a platform that shows you the process, how you perhaps got to the answer. It can show you maybe research methods. And it's also, the professor would also be very involved. So it would be really good because what's the point of teaching the student if the professor is still teaching through outdated ways, right? So I think this is the nuance in Study Buddy, and I think that's why it would be primarily effective. Yeah. Any other questions? Alrighty, thank you guys. All right.
that person was at the White House yesterday, First Lady.
And now our third group. Yeah. Unpin it, and then you're gonna have to. I don't know why it's. You have to, you have to take your finger.
Kind of go with it now.
Yeah, just grab the mic for me, please. Pin it and then.
Hello? Okay, it's working. So, hi everyone, my name is Shyla, and this is...
Good morning, everyone. My name is David.
And basically, our group was group number 4, which focuses on responsible AI, ethics, governance, and trust. So we're first going to cover the problem, then we're going to cover why it matters, solutions, how it works, the impacts, and also the trade-offs. Essentially, looking at AI and governance, there's been a rapid expansion of AI and large language models, which has exponentially exceeded our government's capacity in order to be able to control it. Taking in mind that these effective limitations are even being questioned whether they can even be enforced. Recent developments have reduced oversight, including oppressing state-led initiatives, and also Trump's repeal of Biden's administration's 2023 executive order. Furthermore, at the same time, there's been initiatives such as Elon Musk's Doge, which have gained access to U.S. database which contain very sensitive information. This sensitive information has had their access been leaked to all the language models that have been implemented by him, which have raised concerns regarding security and other data protection issues.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about AI today. So on the left side, you can see with the rollbacks and regulations, like Shayla mentioned, with the repeal of Biden's 2023 executive order, we've seen AI regulations being less strict and not having to follow more and more regulations. And we see the outcome of this is fewer restrictions on how AI companies can, bring out AI, and it's like less government oversight and control as to how we bring out AIs.
Thank you. And keeping in mind the how do you scroll back? Okay, and looking at current day, it's not only affecting the government as a whole, it's also affecting different workspaces. For example, in order to apply to job applications, at least 48% of hiring managers have reported to using AI, and that's only to keeping in mind what we know. And when these AI analyze resumes, it only takes into account historical context of the company. Let's say it's a predominantly white male employed company. When it receives either a female application, it might discredit it completely. Furthermore, it also takes many centers for Medicare evaluation, also take into account historic context or historic data, and this may lead to exclusion of, let's say, minorities who have been linked with lower economic status, and it might cause specific limitations for these approvals.
And furthermore, we see AI algorithms go into something we call the black box. This means they make decisions that even the users and the people that make the AIs don't understand how they came to this decision. And this is very, very critical when we're talking about ethics, because if an AI makes a decision and the people that even made it don't know how it came to this decision, we could be experiencing bias, for example, and we won't even realize it. And going further into that, with the more and more we advance AI is growing into something we call AGI. This is artificial general intelligence. And this is the point where AI reaches a state that it could create itself, improve itself without the use of, human control. And at that point, it reaches that state, human beings won't have control as to how AI comes to decisions, and we will lose control in gets into us like understanding bias in decisions.
And now, before we get into our solution, we'd like to bring in the parties involved. Furthermore, this proposal would be pushed, first of all, through the House of Representatives, through the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, which handles consumer protection, as well as technology policy. Furthermore, we would also pass it through the House Committee on the Judiciary, which basically handles legal accountability as well as regulatory oversight for technology companies. This would then be passed, hopefully, through the Senate, and it would be through the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, which essentially reviews technology policy as well as consumer protections. The Senate Committee on the Judiciary, likewise to the one on the House Committee, it oversees privacy laws, anti-discrimination, as well as legal accountability.
Okay, and then we have more parties involved. We have the executive branch. This is the enforcement. So we have the Department of Justice, and they do the legal violations. They prosecute these violations. We also have the Department of Commerce, and they are more on the technical side. They work with like companies like NIST, and on the right side, we're talking about research and advisory institutions. Like I mentioned, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they are the ones that develop the guidelines that AI has to follow. And we could also collaborate with think tanks and research institutions, because AI is new for everyone. We don't have prior knowledge to help us make decisions, and AI is changing every day. So I think it's very important for us to work with research institutions to understand the current AI climate, to be able to make policies and decisions.
And now getting into the actual governmental framework proposal. Firstly, we would enact a Federal Transparency and Accountability on AI Act. And this would essentially set the national standard for AI accountability and how we would instate guardrails and safeguards for its users. There would be two main forms of monitoring. Essentially, we would do a pre-deployment assessment, and this would evaluate risks that might potentially highlight discrimination. It would also check for threats to digital privacy or even digital misuse in very sensitive areas such as election fraud, for example. Furthermore, they would also be followed by a impact assessment post-deployment, which would basically require these companies involved in AI language models, and we would essentially ask for them to fill out a biannually report, and this would essentially trail all back to everyone that we mentioned before, for example, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and essentially any further legislation that will be passed on. This report would be serving as material for study in order to ensure that legislation in the future covers all future issues. Furthermore, we would also like to establish the FAIC, which would be the Federal Artificial Intelligence Commission. This would be more of a hybrid model, which would work in collaboration with the other agencies we mentioned beforehand. And it would essentially collaborate with the other departments, and its main function would be centering on the assessment and evaluation, and essentially connecting with, for example, Department of Justice to be able to ensure that the law is being backed up and protected.
Finally, we're going to talk about the trade-offs. So with every policy, everything that is implemented, there's always a gain and a loss. First of all, we're going to talk about innovation versus regulation. Stronger AI regulation slows down development. And this was the case. This is a prime example of Biden's executive order and Trump's executive order. Biden's one was more on regulation side and being in control of AI, understanding AI, and Trump's one is more of innovation, because we want to, catch up to China and win the AI race. But, having safer, more ethical systems in charge of AI builds long-term public trust, is more ethical, is more is good for the public. But with these regulations, you could slow down innovation. And then next, we're going to talk about cost versus safety. If we want to implement all these solutions, like the audits and the monitoring, is going to cost money, because especially for some smaller companies, but investment, they help us prevent bias. They improve the security and reduce harmful outcomes. And the next thing is transparency versus proprietary technology. If we implement these policies that require companies to reveal parts of their systems and understand how their system works, they push back in terms of they don't want to lose their intellectual property. But this transparency improves accountability and it strengthens the trust in AI and its decisions. And thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Great presentation. So how do you see the balance between safety and innovation playing out with the military. You see all these major tech companies working with DOW, implementing the technology into the military. We've gone from, with NIST under President Biden, the AI Safety Institute, to now with President Trump, the Standards and Innovation Institute. So how do you see that factoring into the military and the defense complex?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you mean in regards to, let's say, like military internally, or do you refer to, let's say, international operations?
I would say both. Yeah.
Do you want to answer too?
However you want to take that.
Well, firstly, I would
It's
say
used abroad and
Yeah.
here, so.
I would say internally is definitely a little bit of a more easier question to answer. As we mentioned, the FAIC would basically work as a hybrid. It would be consistently a checks and balances sort of system. So by having these assessments consistently, I feel like we can also maybe implement a more further and more consistent monitoring, at least for the internal system of military, because it's such a more sensitive topic. It's more different to, let's say, a corporate type of initiative, let's say like ChatGPT. It's not going to be the same risk as a military operation. So I would say keeping that in context, we would have further implementation of monitoring systems, and maybe in that designated commission, if we could possibly have like a specific research team or a subcommittee in that commission that would be dedicated to specifically drones or specific military operation technology or stuff like that. I feel like it would be important to enforce that. And then when looking at international operations, I feel like that's a more broader subject that would have to incorporate, let's say, like peace treaty deals, because essentially the big issue that's happening now, for example, keeping in mind drone operations that are being done in the Middle East or even in Ukraine, is that some of these AI models are acting on their own, and they would like unintentionally target a specific person by incorrect profiling. And then it really falls into the question of, was it the AI's fault? Was it the developer's fault? Or was it the person that was supposed to be behind it? So I feel like that is a framework that will have to involve not only the US, but also multiple parties, because it would be multiple parties being involved, and not even just internationally, just even in that own spectrum of being, was it the company or was it us? And then I don't know if you would like to add.
Yeah. So like with I forgot his name, but the gentleman that spoke to us yesterday, he did say that before, yes, no, I forgot. He was, no, it was like Reggie. The two gentlemen that spoke to us, they mentioned that, you know, before AI, there were like laws in place. And so we were talking about intellectual property and, you know, copyright infringement. He was like, doing things that you were not allowed to do before AI doesn't change now that you're just using AI. I think with the laws in place already, just because we're implementing AI, it doesn't necessarily change the outcome. We have organizations like, you know, we have NATO, and we have like laws that we already abide by. And so when we implement in AI, it doesn't necessarily give us like a different set of laws to operate by. We still have to operate by the existing laws for the ethical laws already that are in place. And yeah. Any other questions?
I guess feeding off of Carlos's question earlier is, as a university, what is the selling point, or what is something for FIU?
So like we said a couple slides earlier, we intend to work with like think tanks and research and institutions. FIU being a tier 1 research university could play a huge part in this. In, like I said, AI is relatively new, and there isn't much to go off on it. So FIU could invest in doing research on AI and as we implement changes, doing research on those changes, seeing what's working, seeing what's not working, and that information could be used to, you know, affect further changes and further policies.
Yeah, going off of the collaboration framework, I would just say not only seeing AI as a research hub, but maybe like through FIU in DC, we can open an internship opportunity and allow for student voices and a more youthful perspective, as well as, because I remember when we visited the committee in Capitol Hill, we were discussing with one of the members, Max Katz, I believe is correct. And he essentially said that most of these people don't come in, they come in more with a policy background. They come in with a political perspective. They don't come in with that technical sort of history. And he himself was surprised because he came from a physics background, for example. And I think that it's important to not only implement, for example, students that are studying political science or international relations, but it's also essential to invite engineering students or students focused on cybersecurity and be able to get that perspective as well. I feel like it would also be more promotional towards the Hamilton Scholars Program, which I believe I was discussing with one of the communications member, and they say that some people maybe get confused and believe that, oh, it's DC, it's only for poli-sci majors. But no, by using something like this, where we can say, hey, we're having this, the FAIC is like considering interns, let's get you guys in there. It allows for development from all over the world, and especially keeping in mind that Miami is such an innovative hub, I feel like we could get such a broad perspective with the new student body over there.
Yeah, so my question is, of all these solutions that you're proposing, which do you think are, which would you personally invest in the most and why?
I feel like for me, I would say definitely the FAIC, not because the act is less than, in my opinion, but I feel like sometimes evaluations may not be taken with the seriousness that it should be. If we look at, for example, the United Nations, they have a lot of assessment processing and research, but sometimes it just doesn't have the effective executive backing that it needs to. And by having the FAIC being such a hybrid model, it collaborates with the Justice Department, it collaborates with the research institutions, with the National Institute having the standards set and collaborating with the other think tanks. So having all of those players be in the same space, I feel like would be definitely the most versatile solution and the most effective. Although I do consider the act to be essential for more of a framework of the national standard, but that's always going to be subject to update. So in terms of like a long-term protection or just something is going to be backed and is going to be consistently having its own checks and balances, I definitely feel like the FAIC is the more versatile and diverse solution.
For me, I would say the research aspect. I feel like knowledge is power, is information. Information is very critical. Like I said, AI is relatively new, and we don't have as much knowledge on it as we would like to. And so I think investing in research, especially when we put out new policies. I know I spoke with a few of the Board of Trustees, George Heisel, and General Counsel, and we were talking about the trade-offs between implementing a federal AI policy as opposed to states having their own policies. And one thing they spoke about was, we're having with states having their different laws, you could see what works and what doesn't work. And in doing research and, getting that information on what works for this state, what works for that state, it could help in building a broader framework. So I think it is important to do research on, what's working in AI policy, or just in general, what's the different things that work and things that don't work. And that information is going to be used to better make policies in the future. Any other questions? Thank you all so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Albert, and today I'm going to be talking about the Genesis mission and our project proposal. So essentially, the Genesis mission would be led by the Department of Energy, and it would be a centralized place for AI scientific research. So basically, like the about 17 laboratories would come together, and they would all use this AI scientific platform in order to use it for scientific research in regards to energy, biotechnology, and materials. This was the question that we wanted to answer, which was how can AI accelerate scientific discovery and strengthen research ecosystem? The way we would do this would be through automating data analysis, simulating complex molecular dynamics, and controlling autonomous self-driving labs. So automating data analysis would basically have to do with using AI in order to look through results from experiments. Oftentimes when scientists conduct experiments, it can produce large amounts of data. So for example, one experiment could produce 1 terabytes of data, which would take months to go through. AI could do this much, much faster. Simulating complex molecular data would be seeing how tiny particles interact, and this would kind of help with detecting gene mutation, helping create medication. And then also controlling autonomous self-driving labs, which would be labs that are partially run by AI so that scientists could focus more on important research and so that they wouldn't have to be there all the time, and it would also help reduce research costs. By a show of hands, how many of you guys have heard of next generation sequencing? Next generation sequencing is just a fancy way of saying looking through DNA really fast. So like I was saying earlier, oftentimes it takes a really long time to conduct experiments. It takes a really long time to get results. That's why often scientists dedicate their entire life to a niche subject. So next generation sequencing would just be a way of scientists looking at DNA, RNA, proteins really, really fast in a way that has never been done before so that they could get to scientific discoveries much faster. Integrated data analysis. This would just be, when scientists conduct experiments, they often focus on one thing. So they'll focus on DNA only, they'll focus on RNA only, they'll focus on protein only. Integrated data analysis would basically be doing this in a seamless way. AI would do it all together. This would be much faster. It would do it with thousands of data and multiple variables. AI and machine learning. So machine learning is basically AI using data sets in order to train it and to solve complex problem. And neural networks is actually a subnet of machine learning where it simulates the human brain. And that together that comes up with deep learning. And deep learning is basically where you combine machine learning and neural networks in order to simulate how the human brain would interact in a biological perspective. This would help with drug discovery, and it would also help with biomedical imaging. So like looking at MRI scans and CT scans and being able to detect things that scientists and doctors might miss. What does the future hold? There's a lot of anxiety about the future of AI, worried about whether or not it's going to replace jobs, whether or not it's going to reduce white-collar jobs specifically. But with the Genesis mission, it would help increase job opportunities. It would allow scientists to move faster with science and come across scientific discoveries at a much faster rate. It would also help community get involved in research. So like, for example, oftentimes certain demographics of people are not represented in research, and with AI, they could get more involved. Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
So as FIU as a client, what would be something that you would recommend for FIU?
I think the Genesis mission would help with like funding and things like that to help with scientific research and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So I'll ask you the same question. Which initiative would you want to invest in, and why do you think that would be beneficial for the future of AI?
Definitely community like involvement, because I notice a lot looking at scientific research, it's often a very limited demographic. So I think if more people were able to get involved in AI, like so that we could help with like diagnosing medication, creating medications, helping with scientific discoveries, it would be very beneficial.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good job. And we appreciate everyone taking the time. Thank you. I got it. Thank you to everyone watching.